Today we're going to be talking about high impact resumes. I cannot oversell the importance of a resume, and I'm certain most of you understand the importance of this document as well. But what is a resume really? In the most basic terms, it is a 1 or 2 page profile of a potential candidate. But to put it in more context, it's typically the initial impression that you get to make on a recruiter or an academic admissions committee. How you should think about it is high stakes real estate. So this is Park Avenue. You've got about 1 or 2 pages to really sell yourself as a great candidate. And so really that should include high impact information within those 1 or 2 pages. And finally, the way that a recruiter thinks about this is, frankly, it's a brochure that's going to sell an employer on their next employee. And I was in the recruiting role for several years in private industry. And I'll tell you that it could also be the next entry into my recycle bin if it didn't do the good job of telling that story. And then finally, this is your call to action. This is your first major project to complete in order to get a job that you love, that uses your strengths and your skills and puts you on a path to professional purpose. But before we get into the best pattern and the nuances of writing a good resume, I want to lay a good foundation by parsing through your experiences and what I call unpacking your brain. So being great and having an exciting resume is about doing smart things every day, things that make you a stronger professional. When we talk about resumes, we sometimes get stuck on aspects of the resume that are actually really superficial, formatting, design, etc. But what a resume really does at its heart is to start to tell your unique story. What do you do in your life is the foundation of your resume. Doing worthwhile stuff with your time and exhibiting a strong character in your everyday life is the foundation of a resume. You live your skills. You need to be able to unpack your brain, know your value, and articulate your worth to employers through a resume. So first things first, let's find your stories by unpacking your brain. Well, how does one unpack one's brain? Well, like any suitcase that you've packed for a vacation, you start unpacking with the last thing that you squeezed in there. So what's the last thing that you have done for your professional growth? It might be some of these items. Okay, so were you just enrolling in college? Did you just undergo a challenging class? Are you going through an undergraduate research program, which I know all of you are doing right now? Did you have a relevant internship? Did you have a terrible internship? Did you do some summer work? Did you volunteer? Are you part of clubs or organizations? Are you leading those organizations? Have you decided to study abroad? But further, you need to reflect on the result or the value of each of these experiences. So what does it mean when you enroll in college? Well, the result of that is that now you're eligible for degreed positions. Challenging classes give you new knowledge areas. Undergraduate research gives you experience with methods and practice. Relevant internships give you high value skills, where a lame internship might give you respected transferable skills. Summer work makes you familiar with workplace expectations. Volunteer experience gives you networking and character building. Club and organization leadership gives you leadership experience, and study abroad gives you intercultural competence. So the same thing has to go for every class that you've taken in your major. So here are a selection of courses that we offer at UTC's College of Engineering and Computer Science. When you take courses, you are building your knowledge areas and creating a foundation of skills. When you look at your resume as it currently looks right now, do you actually believe that your potential shows? And if the answer is yes, that's great. You really want to be advertising your knowledge areas, because these are the areas that you can start pivoting on to open up new opportunities for you. So let me take a step back, actually. Where did I even learn about this list of skills? Every single college is going to have a course catalog, right? So in the course catalog descriptions, you're going to find a plethora of the skills that each professor, no matter which professor is teaching it, needs to speak towards. Those are the course learning objectives. So within those descriptions, you can start pulling out these key pieces of information in terms of this is the knowledge that I should be pulling out from each of these classes. You can find your unofficial transcript for a list of the courses that you've taken that will help you with this pairing process. So as you unpack your brain, you're going to take an inventory of the value of each of your experiences, and reflect on it. How has it strengthened you in the end? Then, and only then, will you be ready to tell your unique story and your perspective and articulate your potential. This is why taking part in fantastic experiences like iNest program are so critical. When recruiters or admissions committees look at a resume, they are looking for differentiating factors between the dozens of candidates they're evaluating. And you must seek out development experiences so you can build an excellent resume. When you have unpacked your brain, recognize that this conglomeration of life experiences and academics tells a great story about you and what you have to offer an employer or an advanced degree program. So how do you prepare to frame your story to employers? And this part is easy. Know what it is important to the listener, what they need to hear, and make sure that you're meeting or exceeding what they want. So how could you possibly know, for, let's say, in a job situation, what an employer wants from you? How could you possibly know the expectations of a job? With a job, it's very easy because they give you a checklist literally at the start of the story that they want to hear. And that checklist is called the job description. So let's talk about how it would look to use a few job description bullets from an entry-level food science role I found on Indeed. So this is just a couple of pieces that I pulled from online. It's not hard to find, but it really gives you a moment to understand that we already know from employers what they want from their candidates. Your resume's job is then to tell your story that's framed in such a way that meets their qualifications, or at least puts you on the path towards their qualifications. So after you unpack your brain, you're going to need to start assembling STAR responses, which is the best way to discuss your skills and fit with a position. The STAR technique is a way to frame information in an organized manner that will give the listener or reader the best understanding about your experience in a short and easy framework. In short, what STAR stories tell you to do is how to create a very good short story. So cognitive psychologists offer evidence that humans code, remember, and recall information through the medium of story. Great stories have common elements, including a central character. And in the case of sharing your ability to do a task or a job, that character would be you. Next is a stimulating situation, a problem or an obstacle, and the subsequent impact on the central character. Again, that's you. And if you can learn to develop and deliver authentic stories about yourself professionally, you will realize a huge competitive advantage: memorability. Those who tell good stories, rule the world. Your ability to tell your story through your resume or in face-to-face networking is important if you want to make an impression on employers. This isn't to say that you should make a show or try to be entertaining or always be on. What I mean is you will want to paint a picture for the listener that is detailed, descriptive, and complete. So as you prepare to prove that you can exceed the expectations of a job, consider organizing your resume by addressing each component of the STAR. So STAR is, what's the situation in which you were involved, the S. What was the task that you needed to accomplish, the T. What actions did you have to take, the A. And finally, what results or learning did you achieve? Think of this as connecting the dots. It's a hugely effective practice that many people actually fail to do. So here is what you'll want to do to start building your personal STAR stories that are geared towards jobs that you love. On one side, you're going to have the position description, which will include the job tasks that you are going to be asked to fulfill. On the other hand, You're going to have your life experiences, which can provide the examples of your ability to fulfill those listed duties. Your resume is a way of connecting your life experiences to the job description provided. So what can you eloquently, when you can eloquently, provide a star story to address each of these required skills, it only takes logic for an employer to be interested in you as a candidate. I hope that makes sense. So let's start talking about that first place where you tell your poignant stories, and that's the cornerstone of every job search is the resume. So something that's a bit scary to think about when you start composing your resume or paring down your resume, making it better, is knowing that hiring managers typically take less than 8 seconds to review the document. And that can be a little bit daunting, but if you put your resume into an effective pattern, it actually works in your favor, because what they will be getting when they scan your resume for those few seconds is relevant information. So before I get too detailed, I want to encourage you to first lay a good foundation. I suggest that you do not use resume templates. I know they're very easy to get a hold of, and they look really pretty, but they're very hard to edit, very hard to customize, and very often take up a lot of unnecessary space. And as I mentioned before, this is Park Avenue real estate. We don't want to waste a lot of space just because the document's going to look pretty. You can format and make it lovely and make it your own at the end. The most important piece, though, is to make sure your content is good. So the other thing is customization. As a college student, you should be looking at your resume at least every 6 months. And to be honest, professionals should as well. But about every 6 months, you're going to start forgetting what it is that you have done in your last semester, your last 6 months of work experience. So you want to keep up with it very regularly. So starting in Word would probably be your best option. Most people will keep it to 1 page, but 2 pages is perfectly acceptable if you have enough good experience to fill that up. So I want to show you a quick, I want to give you a quick look at what a sample resume so that you can understand what this looks like. So I'm going to be going over each of these sections in just a few minutes, but these are what I'm referring to. So up here is our contact information. Here's our summary statement. Here's our education. Here's our knowledge areas and skills. Here's our experience section, most likely going to be the largest section of your resume. And finally, your leadership and community involvement section. So keep this in mind as we go through each of these sections so that we can unravel each of these pieces. But I wanted to show you that from the start. So first is going to be your contact information. It may seem like a simple thing, but there's actually a couple of pieces of advice within this section. First, you're going to address city, state, and zip code. Your street address is really no longer required. Very, very rarely is anyone ever going to need your street address except to write you an offer letter. To be completely honest, we won't be communicating with you as recruiters via snail mail. So city, state, and zip code is going to be, what reduces the most space. But the other thing that we know is that there are folks who unfortunately discriminate against people who have, for instance, apartment buildings listed versus home addresses that seem like a singular home. So we want to make sure that we're also taking out any reason for them to discriminate against you or take you out of their yes pile. So this is just a very small way to do so. You want to include a professional email address and hyperlink that address. So if you have a student ID attached to an email, that actually works very well if you're going to stay in your area. A lot of local employers will find comfort in that email address. Very often the hiring manager might even have had one themselves. But if you're going to be looking outside of your area, you can go ahead and build yourself one like through Gmail or what have you. That is a reflection of your name. Then you're going to list your best phone number. That's going to connect to an appropriate positive voicemail message if you're unable to pick up the phone. So I stress this because very often recruiters will call to do a quick, it is literally your first interview, even if it's only takes one moment to ask if you're interested in an interview. But they're looking to see what your tone of voice is, how your communication skills are, and they can tell a lot within even a 2 or 3 minute conversation. If, however, you get a message left for you, you want to call back immediately once you're in a quiet location. And I mentioned specifically about the voicemail message because it is really easy for a recruiter to get frustrated if the voicemail isn't set up, if there's no voicemail space. And also, if you have a really bad message on your voicemail, it also sends a bad message to your employer. So make sure there's a positive and professional greeting on your voicemail. You want to include your LinkedIn profile here as well. If you have not yet become acquainted to LinkedIn, actually our next iNest presentation will include some information about LinkedIn. It's a wonderful professional networking platform that 94% of recruiters use. So you'll want to be to have a presence there. All right, second, you might consider starting with an objective or summary statement at the top of your resume, right underneath your contact information. This is going to highlight what you're seeking in a broad sense and the soft skills that you're able to bring to the table. So this should be 1 sentence, 2 sentences at the most. Resumes are professional profiles about a professional candidate. So it's appropriate here for me to mention that we don't use possessives. So words like I, me, mine, my, we want to take those out and start getting used to addressing yourself in third person. So make mention of your education and how you can serve a company in a particular role, and 2 or 3 soft skills or personal attributes. That's really good to incorporate in this space. So a quick example is pending electrical engineering graduate seeks to diligently serve a growing manufacturing firm in need of a highly organized professional with a penchant for collaborative thinking. So not only do we provide there a good snapshot of who you are, but also what you want. So it makes it clear to the employer what your career path and what type of internship or job that you're looking for. In the second section, you're going to be listing your education. This goes above experience because in your situation as students, most likely what you're pivoting on at this time is your education versus your previous experience. This may be different in your case because you have a unique scenario, and that's fine. But for most of y'all, education would happen at the top of the page. Again, this is so that it's an effective pattern for interviewers. They will see the most relevant information first. So college level information only is needed as high school education is assumed. Again, there's going to be exceptions. So if you went to an elite high school, if you want to discuss honors and activities from that era, if you were valedictorian, etc., you might want to include it, but in most cases that's not necessary. You want to list any GPAs above 3.0 and any awards received, as well as academic associations joined. You'll also want to include a relevant coursework section that details courses that a recruiter or an admissions team might want to know that you have taken, in some way echoes your summary or objective statement. In the third section, you're going to list the skills that would make you a valuable employee. For students, very often this is expanded to knowledge areas and skill sections. I'm going to briefly explain the difference. So knowledge areas are things that you know, but you haven't used yet. Skills are things that you know and have used. So in order to make sure that your resume is not inflated and essentially no one's lying, we make it clear that the section encompasses both for students. So these are things that, an employer would think are very valuable here. So you want to brainstorm what you've learned in classes, what you've learned through previous positions to include in this section. And this may force you to crack open a few dusty textbooks and notebooks. You want to stick to the hard facts here. So not so much strong organizational skills or hardworking. You want to be thinking about skills that it actually took you a lot of work to learn. So for instance, SAS, or project management, things of those nature. So look up your courses in the course catalog to see the key skills that are listed for the classes that you have taken and what you want to take with you into your chosen profession. In the next section, you're going to list your experience section. And these are positions and activities that relate to the field that you're hoping to enter. This could include academic projects, internships, volunteering, and even industry blogging, as well as, of course, paid positions in the field. It's important to think of great job descriptions where you create statements about the value you added to the company through your job, not just listing the tasks that you did, which is also an important part of it, but not the only important part. So the descriptions should not only address what you did, but how you did and why you did it, and include the results of your efforts. So sounds a bit like the STAR method again, right? And if you did a lot on campus, but not a lot in the workplace, that's fine. You want to take a look at how you can market those campus experiences to best bring your campus roles into your resume. And your career advisor at your college or university should be able to help you do that. So the other thing to mention here, and we're going to go into job descriptions a little bit more deeply in a few moments, but experience should be in bullet format, as most people will not read paragraphs of information. And then finally, I'm sorry, one quick note about experience. The reason why it's red on this slide is because it really does draw the attention of your recruiter if you have any type of transferable or related experience to what they're looking for next. That's one of the most important things for them, is to see a connection between the role that they have to offer and your previous skill sets and experiences. So I want to encourage all of you that if you have not thought about internships or co-ops, that you are thinking about those opportunities. So moving on from here, employers are seeking entry-level talent who are natural leaders with potential to grow into the company. So we're in a pretty unique state right now where a lot of companies are graying out, which means that there's lots of opportunities opening in leadership and management. So for this reason, you want to list any of the leadership roles that you've taken on. They're looking for, essentially, that when they hire someone, they want to keep an eye on someone that they think is management material. You also want to include your experiences that make you a well-rounded individual, especially in engineering and computer science fields where students do tend to focus deeply on their academics, and soft skills tend to be the area that employers feel we need more help with in terms of their candidacy. So if you have had experiences like intramural sports that taught you how to, it sends a message that you have skills around collaboration and team working. If you have experiences in volunteering for your community, it sends a message that you have a strong character and that you have a good enough work-life balance that you're able to dedicate some of your precious time to community service. So following this pattern ensures that the recruiter's 8-second scan of your resume is showcasing your industry background and little else. From there, you have about 20 to 30 seconds to impress the reader once you've caught them, for them to keep reading that you're a good candidate for the job. So glance at your resume, see what immediately jumps out at you. And if it isn't what you want the employer to see first, you're going to need to revise it and reformat it. From here, let's talk about those job descriptions. So when you talk about your experiences, the first thing I'll tell you is to be ABC, accurate, brief, and clear. So as we become more aligned, as I've just mentioned, as we become more aligned by how the internet dispenses information instead of books, readers have adapted to seek information in easily digested snippets. So instead of those longer paragraphs, use shorter bullets that are concise. I will tell you that numbers and results tell employers that you're dedicated to results and measurement, and you understand that companies have goals and that you can meet them. So within these descriptions, you want to tell your story. What tasks did you do? How did you perform those tasks? And that question really means, what processes did you use? What skills did you use? And those skills could be hard skills, as you just discussed, that are very concrete, or those softer skills. So this is an appropriate place to include softer skills where it wouldn't be appropriate for your knowledge areas and skills section. This is a great place to start unpacking that. They do want to hear about it, but this is the appropriate place for that. And then, why did you do that task? This is where most students don't include this information, is, what impact did you have here? And this is where the numbers and that data really does paint a picture. So you want to also use action verbs. So this is where resumes can be a little boring to read for recruiters. I do understand that, we're looking at about 100 to 300 of them for any given job. So just the tedious work of getting through resumes can be a little bit difficult. But if it's written in passive voice, it's even worse. So use your action words, use varied action words on your resume, and that'll bring it to life. The other thing that I will say about your job descriptions is that what students often miss too is that they have excellent transferable skills. So if you were ever in a place where you were leading a team, that you were managing resources or people, you were in charge of scheduling, if you had to solve problems, if you had to be the person who communicated between groups, if you were the one who was driving innovation, driving change, those are all incredibly important things, no matter what field you go into. So you'll want to make sure that you're drawing that information out, even out of what I think we might think of as the most mundane jobs. I remember, getting my first job in education because of my experiences as a babysitter, a tutor, and working at Subway, just because I was able to really extract from those experiences what drove me to be someone who could create learning experiences for people, develop relationships with students and parents. So there's a way to spin your experiences in such a way, but you do have to do the work of reflecting on those experiences deeply. So think about transferability. And then the next thing that I would say is to go back to that STAR method, right? So at the end of it, we really want the STAR method to be the leading factor in the way that you are presenting yourself to employers and to your admissions teams. So let's work on writing experience descriptions that take into account the ABCs, accurate, brief, and clear, what transfers for a recruiter, and how important addressing STAR is in telling a great story about yourself. So here's an example, okay? Let's say a finance student who's interested in a financial reporting position was a cashier at Whole Foods. And I think this is something that we can all understand and relate to. So this is what he might include in his resume, right? So responsible for talking to customers, running the registers, counting money, and processing credit cards. He's not wrong. He's just not convincing with this statement, right? It's not bad, but it's not good either, right? So let's address the ABCs first and make it more accurate, brief, and clear, while adding more action to it, okay? So using this advice, it moves to something like this. Engages customers, operates the POS system, which is a point of sale system, and manages financial transactions. Okay, it's already looking better, right? Well, but we're just getting started. Next, let's think about what transfers in the mind of the recruiter who's looking for that company's next analyst, right? Does she care about POS system so much? You'd have to look through the specific job description, but it's highly unlikely. But communication skills, handling money, being proficient with technology is important. So let's take what experience would transfer for the recruiter into account next. So with that, it would be engage and communicate with customers while managing financial transactions through retail management technology. Okay, so now we're cooking. So this is starting to matter, see? So one last step and we're there, and that's engaging the STAR method in our description. So remember, this means situation, task, action, and result. When we think about applying the STAR method in a description of past experiences, the situation is embedded in the job title or the organization. So the focus is more on the TAR part, the task, action, and result. So this person's T, their task is to check people out. But we don't yet know how many people or if the task is as simple as it may seem. And the action is the A. What actions or behaviors does this person have to take on to do that task well? I'd assume being accurate is important or attentive. And what does this task successfully actually look like? And then the R, what is the result here? How did this person lend value to the store by being there? What accomplishment did he or she make? So let's add some STAR to this. All right, so in this scenario, the bullets were expanded from 1 to 3 and this is how we sort of pulled it out a little. Engage and communicate with patrons to provide support and promote customer loyalty. You see the result there is customer loyalty. Accurately manage financial transactions through retail management technology to prevent loss and ensure short wait times. Sorry, tongue twister there. So again, the result is embedded in the description. And consistently recognized by management for high standards of service. So then we also see the results in terms of service to the organization. So the goal is not necessarily to make your resume longer with this practice of reviewing for ABCs, transferability, and STAR strength. But the purpose is to reinforce how well your story is told and how it's going to resonate with the reader or the listener. Since they are flooded with applications, recruiters are looking for easy ways to release candidates. I know that sounds terrible to say, but it's true. Their job is to go from 350 candidates to 1, and that is a process of elimination. So it's easy to get put out in the no pile for some very simple mistakes. And I want to bring these to your attention so that, grammatical errors, poor sentence structure, ugly formatting, spelling mistakes, and long resumes don't become the reason why you don't get your job. So you want to make sure that you are providing good contact information where you can be easily reached. Nothing's going to cut you out quicker than bad contact information. You want to, as I mentioned before, get rid of annoying or inappropriate ringtones. Ensure that your message is professional. Make sure that your email address is a reflection of your name in some way, if that's possible. And you want to also, something that I notice in students a lot is that they integrate their birth year into their email address. And I will warn you against that again, because of discrimination. So if in your case, you put your birth date in there, they may discriminate against you for being too young. In my case, if I included it, they may discriminate because I'm too old. So you want to keep that out of the picture completely. Don't be fancy with your formatting. Okay, so I would promote consistent and clean formatting. It makes it hard to update or revise your resume. It can be really distracting. As an entry applicant, your resume should be 1 page long, maybe 2 pages. So I've seen pages up to 6 pages long for people who it's appropriate for, because they have a lot of research experience. They have a lot of publications. So in your case, the appropriate length may be longer than what I am describing, but you have to be smart about the decision of how long your resume should be. I will tell you that if it's longer than 2 pages, you'll definitely want, well, no matter what, you'll want to have a couple of people look at your resume, but chances are they're going to let you know that it's a little too long if it's anything longer than 2 pages. Do not list references unless specifically requested by the employer. Do have them ready as a separate document, the form of which matches your resume and your cover letter. This is to protect your contact's information. You want to sort of hold that information close to your chest. And if you are emailing this to a person or entering into an applicant database, you can go ahead and submit that while you're applying. But if not, you want to save that for your first contact with the employer. And I don't suggest that you waste space on your resume with references available upon request. Like I said, this is Park Avenue. You don't need that single line used up for a message that we know you're going to do. If I think you're a great candidate and I ask for references, I've never had someone say, I'm sorry, I'm not going to give those to you. So save your space. Watch out for slang. So watch out for acronyms or slang. HR people may not be aware of those abbreviations and pass right over you. For instance, writing BI experience might resonate with some people, but a recruiter may not know that what you're referencing is business intelligence. But sometimes it makes sense. So including CECS makes sense rather than writing software as a service, because no one uses that. So to this point, you just want to be careful with your acronyms and slang. Make sure that it is as relevant when you include it. On a related note, create a framework for recruiters when possible. For instance, if you want to list social media networking on your resume, actually write out social media networking followed by a colon and list the platforms that you use. If you just simply list Instagram, it can confuse a recruiter. Years are out, so do not list years when you're referring to degrees earned over 5 years ago. Also, don't list years when discussing your skill set. For instance, if you're talking about SaaS, listing SaaS 5 years. Just list SaaS and show your conversation will bring out the details of your skills in that area. I mentioned it briefly before, but a GPA of a 3.0 or higher is appropriate to list on your resume. A good way to think about this is essentially anything below that point is average. And what you're trying to do is distinguish yourself as someone who is different and worthy of special consideration, right? So you're trying to be that 1 out of 350. So that's why it's only appropriate to list GPAs above a 3.0. Your job descriptions should provide details about how you added value to the company. Even if you were a crew member at McDonald's, writing prepared and maintained dining room to promote customer loyalty reads a heck of a lot better than cleaned up the eating area. Okay, so think about those details. And then think about personal branding. Recruiters and hiring managers tend to appreciate personal branding quite a bit. So it indicates professional passion, involvement, lets them further into your brain. So again, consider adding that LinkedIn site, your blog, etc., but only if they're completely professional and geared towards your profession. The last thing I would say is don't inflate skills and responsibilities. Okay, so that's the cornerstone to a great resume, is making sure that it is true and accurate. From here, I wanted to do a couple of odds and ends. Resumes should be easy to read. So I'm not going to go out and tell you exactly what your resume, your format needs to look like, your font needs to look like, etc. But they should be easy to read. All communication should be professional. So your resume looks wonderful, but the email that you send the resume as an attachment in had word errors, the spelling errors. It was written in professionally. You said hey as a greeting. Think about this as you put together your applications for either jobs or for advanced degrees. All communication really should be highly professional throughout the process. A PDF is best. So no matter what you use in order to build your resume, make sure that you convert it to a PDF when it is completed. That is the best way to ensure that it is being viewed in the setting that you want it to look like when it's finally being viewed. And then finally, title your files simply. So first name, last name, resume is a perfect way to do it. I have seen people exclude people from job openings because they said something like Irene Hillman revised for UTC. So it makes me wonder as a recruiter, like, what did she change here to make it only geared to me? Like, it sends a bit of a, not a red flag, maybe an orange flag, but enough that it gets people on their edge. So don't indicate that there was any tweaking done when you put your file together. And to be clear, your resume should be tailored every time you do apply for a job. So this is really just a matter about packaging, right? Every single job really should be looked at very carefully to make sure that your resume lines up between the job description and your life experiences and presented in a way that makes sense for your recruiter to say yes to you. If you are in need of a more in-depth walkthrough for your resume, please be in touch with me. I have an informational webinar that I built for some students in previous semesters, and I would be happy to send it out. And then finally, I want to have you think a little bit about keywords. So we're in an age when most resumes go into a database rather than into a pair of hands. And that's fine, but you need to make sure you understand how to navigate that wisely. So first and foremost, you want to determine your target job titles. Secondly, you're going to look up job descriptions for those job titles. And third, you're going to identify recurring words describing the duties or preferred skills, right? And if it's not hard, if it's too hard for you, I don't think it's going to be hard for any of you, but you can use things like word clouds in order to drop all of those job descriptions in, and you're going to be able to see very clearly the recurring words. But those top words are going to need to be incorporated into your resume appropriately. So what this does is to make sure that your resume is tailored towards those job descriptions. And when it goes through the applicant tracking systems, when they put in essentially their algorithms to pull out the resumes that have the most matches, yours will fall within that realm. All right, from here, I would like you to pause the video, and I'd like you to take a moment to develop a brief description of the iNest program based on the advice provided here. How will you integrate it into your resume? It should be within your experience section, since this is an active program where you will be actually conducting research. And think about what your end goal is in terms of your career outcomes. How should this program activities be lined up with your goals, those target jobs that you're looking for when you're done with school? From here, I will say that my parting advice always about resumes is that anything that makes you competitive belongs on your resume. Circumstances are going to differ for every one of us, right? If you served in the military, well, thank you, first of all. If you have some deep professional experience, if your life has taken you on paths divergent from the experiences of other students in this workshop may have experienced, some of this advice may not be exactly right for you. So I want you to just take the spirit of the advice rather than the specific advice. So again, I want you to leave that door open to not take anything off of your resume based on this conversation that you think makes you competitive. And to this point, what I would say is it's incredibly important to have at least 2 professionals that you trust to review your resume. From there, they can redline it and give you their advice and their 2 cents on things. At the end of the day, however, the resume is yours. You need to be comfortable with the final product and you need to be proud of the final product. But the people in your network can help. Thank you for your time. If you have any questions, I will provide my email in the distribution of the video. Would love for you to be in touch and let me know. I'd love to answer any questions for you. Thank you so much for your participation in the INES program as well as this workshop.